Brian Stroebel is the Business Development Coordinator for Gestal USA. He's also a member of the 2025 Pork Leadership Institute. Today he'll be sharing about labor and technology for modern swine production. Let's welcome Brian to the podium.
Well, good morning. I wanted to say happy to have my colleague Emily here with me today and to give some background on me as well before we get started. We did own two 4,000s, one for Smithfield wean to finish and one JBS feeder to finish. So 8,000 spaces total, so that'll come up in my talk. And I do have questions on my last slide, so if you don't have questions, I have some for us. So let's get started here. I really want to be application-based, so that's what the focus of this is. So how do we use innovation and technology and going towards AI? So always with the farm worker in mind. We've already discussed what our typical profile is today. I would make a distinction on the sow farms versus the finisher sites for pigs, and it's probably similar for dairy, beef, and chicken as well, but it'll be primarily on the sow farm side. So my expectations, I do want to challenge you, so that's why I have a couple quizzes in here too, since we're at university today, and I want to draw some similarities and differences among the choices. So I want to get you thinking about that and build upon what the other speakers have already talked about this morning. So I wanted to jump in and lay some groundwork on artificial intelligence. We've already had some discussion this morning on why we don't implement as much as maybe other industries do. I think that's a challenge for us. I think currently our best technology in the barn is this right here. It's RFID tag. This is 2025. And we'll see tomorrow how we stand against the crop side. And yes, we've got a long ways that we could implement, but I think there's some various reasons that I would state that as well. Maybe primarily being it's more owner-operator on the crop side versus us, we have employees. And I'm open to debate on that, but that's my main thinking. So in defining artificial intelligence versus technology, you can see technology is more of a device or material, versus artificial intelligence is using that information to make decisions. So quiz number one, and I give you the answer, but what is not a modern design consideration? And obviously it's C. We don't have a lot of labor, we're using more technology, but I think there needs to be a balance. And again, I'm open to debate on this, but it's not all labor. I think some of our sow farms still think, hey, I can do it with labor, I've done it this way before, and then there can be discussions at the barn on how to do it better, and when the person leaves that they were having a discussion with, they say, oh, that was a good idea. Maybe we should implement that. And also the discussion, especially with the PLI group, about sustainability. There's 3 or 4 definitions of that, but what does that mean? Does that mean I want to keep the farm for the next generation? Does that mean doing things the same as we've been doing them, or do I need to implement a new technology to achieve that? So another slide going from technology to AI, I wanted to highlight that Stanford University started this in 2016. They've already given 2 reports, so it's every 5 years that they're reporting on what's the status of implementing AI in our society. This isn't meant to be a commercial, but it's meant to be where I'm coming from. When we talked back in the 80s, you see the feed line running up the top left of the screen there under the word example. That was a key piece in our development, I think, on the livestock side, especially on the swine side, which means now I can deliver feed inside the barn to each pen or individual versus me having to bucket feed in or get in. Yesterday I was in a barn that was built in 1980, and I remember what we were doing at that time and how we delivered feed. So that's a key part to keep in mind. Another key part on design is anything touching the floor being metal. So that's mechanical. And then anything hanging off the feed line, which is now, that's how I collect the data. So that means any jostling from the sows, that happens on the floor, that is totally disconnected from what's hanging on the feed line. So that's a key piece on how we collect information. And then as you see, moving towards AI on the right. So you can see where we're at now with mechanics, electronics, moving towards AI. And it's really that key piece, how those are intertwined. Here we are today, 2025, and trying to think, what's this going to look like in 10 or 15 years? I've seen 2 or 3 of these already, and I'm still young, so hopefully see some more. But, what's design look like from you at a university, what's your designs and thoughts going to be on how we can achieve these results in the future? I wanted to show this slide to show this is a common circuit board that we use across platforms. Most all our farms, whether it's sow farm or finisher today, have circuit board in their ventilation controller. We all have a cell phone, so that's in the barn as well. And when we add this is our way to collect data. What we try to do is make sure it's common across whether it's farrowing, gestation, or finishing. So any platform, it's a similar circuit board or setup. So it's not totally different, so it's not so complex for the farm. I've already mentioned RFID tag. I am open to debate on this, but I still think this is our current best technology that we have to collect data. You know, you've seen how it goes in the ear. I can show you how we read the tag, but we can get a lot of information from that. So comparing this to barcodes, yes, I can get multiple animals, I can get a lot more data, and I can get it quicker. All are advantages for us. So I'm thinking at least we've got this. Let's say, my question is, what's next? What are we going to be developing? So I had published a couple articles, and I think we all know the acronym for ASABE, American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineering. And Emily pointed out this morning, this was a few years ago that these were published. One was on water, one was on RFID tag, and most of the time, you know, RFID tags are used in a pen. In farrowing, I don't need an RFID tag because it's one animal per farrowing crate. But whenever she's in a pen, I need to know who she is so that we know how much feed she needs, and I know the time slot when she ate, and that's how I collect the data. Okay, quiz number 2. I don't have the answers for these two for you on this slide. So I think you know the answers already. What is a mama pig called? A sow, yep. And then how many piglets does she usually have? 13 to 15? I think you used to be right. Now we're seeing more 16 to 20s. As we make genetic progress, that's a great thing. We can get more piglets per sow, or 16 functional teats on a sow now, or even some selecting for 18. But we're going to larger litters. We talked about throughput this morning with Jared and Dr. Lowe, and of course we want more throughput. And that's part of our job in this technology labor interconnection here. How can we manage those 16 to 20 pigs now? I want to keep them alive. I don't want stillborns. I want them out the door on the truck going to the nursery or the wean to finish site. Let's talk about daily reports. So this is a typical report for pen gestation. So in some ways this is good, in some ways this isn't what I'd like to see. So you can see the left, we start at midnight. So you can see the purple is the feed that's distributed. The red line is when I want the farm to be done eating most of the sows to be eaten for the day. So it's usually 2 o'clock. Usually the staff leaves at 3 or 3:30, so I give them a little bit of time, an hour and a half, to find any sows that didn't eat. And we usually do a 3-day red list. So if they didn't eat Monday, they didn't eat Tuesday, and today's Wednesday, I got to find her before I leave. Do not leave the farm without finding her if she's on my red list. That's our rule. What's bad on this curve is the pink. That means we're getting lots of sow visits trying to go in and get more feed, but they've already gotten their allotment. If they're supposed to get 5 pounds for today, they've already eaten their 5, we're not going to give them any more. And that's because when we read the tag with the RFID reader in the station, it says, hey, she's gotten her allotment, we're not dropping any more feed. So that's, I'd say, a simple graph that the farm uses every day to see how we're doing. So ideally, yes, I like the purple, but I want the pink to be lower too. I don't want them to keep going back in trying to get more feed. And with top technology does come training. So that's part of our job in industry, to help them train. It can be as simple as turning off the station or unplugging it and plugging it back in. That's most always step 1. If there's a problem, unplug it, plug it back in. Like your cell phone, turn it off, turn it back on. Then we can go through more advanced troubleshooting steps. And most of that is done remotely, either by text or by calling us for biosecurity not going into the farm. And then talking about sources of labor, we've already mentioned our labor sources, especially on the sow farm, where I would say I don't disagree, heavily Hispanic versus contract finishers, either being owner-operated or American labor, I would say. So my numbers I use is one person can manage an 8,000 head finish site, by themselves, full-time, so a full-time equivalent, an FTE, full-time equivalent, versus a sow farm, it's usually 300 sows to one person. So if I've got a 2,500 head sow farm, I'm expecting I got 8 or 9 people or 8 or 9 vehicles every day, coming to work. That may be lower or higher, but that's the general numbers we're using. So the bottom line of this slide then is, most of the time I'm bringing labor over, and it is younger labor. They are already technology savvy, I think in the most case. I would not say that they're resistant to technology, but I also think, like the questions this morning, the owners, usually 50 to 60-year-olds, and they're more technology averse versus our employees at the farm. So the end product being, pigs out the door. Yes, we want a high number of viable piglets, whether they're 15 pounds, going to the wean to finish side or going to the nursery, but that is our end product. Yes, it is a commodity, but we want to get quality product and a high number out the door. Then I want to talk more about software. So yes, there's always an interaction of human interaction with what data we've scanned with RFID reader. So what I'm showing here is the mobile reader. So you can scan a tag. So if I need to find red list sows, I'll take this to the barn and scan. If I got a pin of 30, I might have to scan 30 sows to find, which one she is. And we'd always have a visual in the other ear, so if she ever loses the RFID tag, she's got a visual, so I know who she is. So one column in my data is RFID tag, the other is the visual tag. And then I want to get you thinking and challenge you, and I think Dr. Lowe especially did a good job challenging us this morning on what's this going to look like in 12 or 15 years. As my one bullet point here says, in green, that's really our design life expectancy. By that time, there will be a new technology. What they currently have will be depreciated out. They'll know that, hey, I got to make a change, what's next? Like I said, I've probably seen at least 2 of those in my lifetime currently, and I hope to see more. So where we're at now is, yes, we are wireless, because if we had more wires, we have more mice issues or more complexity in the barn, and how often we ask them to do anything manual. So we do ask them to manually calibrate today. Another good point to discuss is weighing pigs. Is that something I want to do with a scale? Can I trust that data every day? Or is that something I want them to manually weigh? So I think in industry, we pay a lot of attention to that on what we ask the farm to do. And I still think those are good discussion points. So this is a good caption. Somebody told me that you always remember what somebody says at the beginning of the presentation and at the end. So this is towards the end of the presentation. So that visual saying, here's what it looks like in the barn. So pen gestation in the lower left, then lactation just to the right of that, and then what it looks like in the barn across from the yellow arrow. So for lactation, that's what my data looks like. Unless you're colorblind, everybody knows that red is bad, yellow is in the middle, green is good. So I sort my girls that are doing fine to the bottom. So if I'm a 5,000 head sow farm, I don't need to look maybe necessarily at all those sows. I want to concentrate on the ones who need our attention. So that's my key point on the labor discussion. We can use technology to know who's eating well, but again, I still want personnel to be addressing those sows who need attention. I don't want a robot doing it. Even 12 or 15 years from now, I still think that's an animal husbandry issue. And what gets me sometimes too is the animal rights folks who come after the livestock industry. As long as we're acting on our data and acting on the poor performers, we're doing our job. So, and this isn't anything we fudge. This is coming from a third party in my mind. Coming from the feeder, the precision feeder. So it's not something we can fudge on a sow card. Our job is to make sure we're addressing the poor performers. And that's also what I've been saying to the veterinarians. I think we should use the red list or the data before they go into the barn in the morning at 6:30 to look, because visually I could look at a pen of sows, but I didn't know who ate yesterday. If I'm floor feeding or drop feeding, I don't know. But if I look at my data here in the office on the computer before I go out, write it on a notepad or take their tablet out, I'm looking for those specific girls, because that's like a lab analysis to me. That's extra information that I have before I ever lay my eyes on those sows in the pen. So I didn't want to offend you, Jim, but that's what I've been telling veterinarians. I think that's something that we can provide with precision feeding. And then this is a key part too. I'd like for you to remember the top right. See him reaching down over the creep divider to help piglets get to a teat, or testing the milk flow on her. 12 to 15 years, I don't see that changing. I don't think we've got any inclination of designing a robot to do that. My question is, like I said, I was a barn owner before, 8 barns. What are my guys doing every day? So is it valuable? Do they go home and tell their wife or their spouse, what did you do today? Well, I bucketed feed, or did I help piglets get to a sow or to a teat? They used to be $35 a piece for weaned pigs, now $65, $70 or higher. It's real money for a person to be able to get a piglet to a teat. I can automate that feed system. When I worked for Smithfield, we didn't even discuss it when we did a farrowing retrofit. We're automating the feed system. What's the next question? So it's like, just so we know where we all stand, I want to put as much value on the people as possible. So we can use the technology, but I still want them making a decision based on the information that we provide. So the other 2 pictures, the middle one showing lactation, you don't see anybody in there right now because we're automating the feed system, and they laid down so they can eat when they want to. And then the lower left is showing our targeted performance. We want them to be eating, in this case, the top of the green line. And I never want a limit feeder. I always want to provide her more, as much as she wants to eat. I would like to say one other comment on that. We've got AI coming. Like we said, we've gone from technology with our precision feeding towards artificial intelligence. One of my questions is going to be here, I'd never tell somebody to limit feed a sow, but if she ate 24 pounds on average last turn, and I didn't get any more litter weight from the piglets that were weaned, and I didn't get any more back fat from her to rebreed quicker next time, the question has become, so why did I feed her so much? Maybe I should cap her at 19 pounds. But I'd have never said that before. Our job in lactation is to feed all she wants to eat as long as she's not wasting it, because it's either going to back fat or litter weight. But with AI, now we knew that, hey, she wasn't converting it. She was eating it, but it wasn't being converted to something useful, so I could save that 5 pounds a day. So that's I think, one application of AI, and I think a lot of this gets into ethics as well. We can do technology, but should we? The classic case right now is PRRS resistance. We can do it, but will the public allow us to do it? Or the genetics companies, trying to implement it? So is it an FDA question or a general public question? And then this is my last slide. So like I said, these are some of my questions, and for time-wise, I could highlight a couple of these, then I'm open to questions. But number 3, I'd like to say, how can we find the fall-behind sows? Like I already said, our focus should be on the poor performers. I was in a 7,500 head sow farm 2 weeks ago, all hand-fed in lactation, and I met most of the crew, 30 people or 32 people that worked there. I say, wow, that's a lot of people. And the owner was high-fiving them in the hallway. He knew them, but he was getting close to retirement. So it's like, well, what's this going to look like in 5 years? And do I have the data to know who performed well? When I get ready to cull that sow, can I use her performance data as a culling aspect, to say if she didn't eat well, maybe I should call her. She's costing me money more than she's making. So those are real decisions that we can use from the data. And my question number 5 too, I'll learn more about this tomorrow, but I've already stated that we have a lot of employees at the farms versus being owner-operators, most of the crop farms, and I'm open to discussion on this. When I hear 17,000 acres, that's a lot, for however many people, but when I was an owner of the farms, it's like, what else can I do to help my employees? Either give them manure or provide housing for them, or profit share, because it's a commodity business. The money's got to come from somewhere, but how could I help them feel more like an owner? So with that, I'm open to questions. I'm interested to see what you have. Good.
I think it's like, I think I like it, your technology that, but using the technology, sensors and AI models and machine learning, it's a lot of money. So how can we do that, like reducing the cost and increase the production? Is there any possibility in the future we can reduce the cost?
Yes, that's a good question. And I don't want it to be a commercial. I just want to give my experience. I think the classic experience so far for Emily and I have been pen gestation. So last summer, we went with one of the builders, and we laid out all the options that they have for converting to pen gestation, whether, it could be Prop 12, but it could be just going to pre-implant or post-implantation. And surprisingly, with costs of like with metal costs right now, the cost for implementing technology is right in there, because you got to think, I got less gating, I've got less aisles, I'm utilizing my space better. We got a separate worksheet on that to show to people so that they're thinking about that. Because the first thing they'll say was, well, I'm going to cut off the backs of my stalls, and I'm going to go quarter stalls and drop feed. And then we're saying, I've got variation in body condition in, because I'd be a slow eater, so I wouldn't get as much feed as a boss sow or somebody who eats faster. So I think all those things need to be considered. And we run into that, every day as far as the slow adopters. And that's probably the hardest part of, my job is like, okay, how do I look at the total picture? So of course we want to look at cost, but I also want to look at body condition, because that's going to cost us money as well. And then we're tasked, I had a call yesterday with Denmark. How can I develop gilts better to keep them in the herd longer? Because that's costing us money. And how can I address the sow death loss if we're at 15 to 20% sow death loss? So those are valid questions that we can, work on with technology. And then we get asked the question, well, are you saying 3 or 4% on sow death loss? No, but like the guys in Spain said, but it's greater than 0. So there is payback that we get from that versus developing a gilt on a rectangular stainless feeder, full feed, and then, there's no way to slow her down. She grows too fast. So I went several different directions there to answer that question, but payback is always something that we are at top of mind, because we try to be, producers first. When you're writing a check, it's like, I hope that, there's good payback for that. Go ahead.
I have a question about, we were kind of describing risk aversion and profitability and customers or producers that have existing technologies. How do you work with them to build trust in new technologies and help with the transition from, you just can't flip a light switch and all of a sudden you're using a different methodology.
Yep.
So can you say a little bit about how important it is to be able to demonstrate performance and help them in shifting from the left foot to the right foot for new technology?
Very good question. I got 2 answers. One is a personal one, and one is something we do with videos. And I've said this many times. I said, you don't need to take my word for it. Ask somebody who's already implemented, like a Rob Brenneman, for example, or somebody else in the pork industry who's done something that's novel on a big scale and says, hey, I'm going all in on this. So that's one way, I think, to address it, taking somebody else's word for it, or talking with them, or going to their barns to see, without somebody else there with a vested interest, saying, okay, how well is this really working? Tell me the truth, not trying to sell me something. The second one is something I'll never forget. At one of our farms, I had an outside vendor come in, and he was trying to talk to my manager's dad. And his dad, I was outside, I was weed whacking, and Dad said, we've done it like this for 15 years, and I'm not going to change. And, then the vendor comes out, and he said, well, I gave it my best shot. Tell him, because we get to see lots of farms, and he said, this is what we're doing at the other farms to save on propane in this case. And then turned out a week later and said, boy, that was a good, the manager's dad said, that was a good idea. Or he tried to pass it off like it was his own, like he had come up with the idea, when it's like, I heard what was going on outside, and I didn't forget that. But it is hard to change somebody's viewpoint, if they're set on their way. But that's my whole discussion on sustainability. To me, it doesn't mean, keeping doing things like we have. If there's a better way to do it, to me, that's what helps us to be sustainable. It's not like, hey, we were using horses, and now I got to pay for a truck or a wheeled vehicle. That's probably the same discussion they had back in, in the 1900s. But once you see the benefit, you get past that point. Hope that answers the question, but that's where I'm, especially when you're the owner, and somebody says, no, I'm going to do it my way, versus you're trying to help them out and show them a better way.